Hey, so welcome back to my channel. This is going to be my recap of Marry My Husband Season 1, Episode 15. So it picks up where it left off, where Mr. Yu pulled Min-hwan off of Ji-hyuk because at this point he was strangling her, and they get into a tussle, and of course Min-hwan gets his butt kicked, right? So then we flash to Mrs. Yang. Suk-jun is bringing her home, and he's basically telling her, like, if your husband calls, don't answer. If he comes by, don't open the door. Going through, the whole safety thing with her. And then she thanked him for, taking her to and from the hospital for her appointments. And so they talked for a bit. And then she said, I forget, he said something, and then she said, but you said you cared about me. And of course there was this awkward moment, and then of course he receives a phone call from Mr. Yu saying that he was at the police station. So he and Mr. Yu and Min-hwan are both locked up. So the first stop they make, they as in Miss Yang and Suk-jun, is at the hospital. They went to check on Ji-hyuk. She's stable. They basically said, she obviously suffered some injuries, but she's stable. And they're still kind of running tests to assess her. And then you flash to Mr. Yu and Min-hwan. Of course, they're in separate cells. And Min-hwan is basically saying that he's going to go to the media to tell them that this third generation tycoon assaulted him, and then he's making excuses again for his behavior. Like, do you know why I snapped? Like, Ji-hyuk drives people crazy and make them do things. And of course, Mr. Yu was like, it's not my fault or Ji-hyuk's fault that you ruined your life. You're a trash human being. So, eventually Suk-jun gets down, bails him out. And Min-hwan was like, well, what about me? And I'm, of course you're thinking, why the hell would he bail you out? You attacked a woman that he loved, almost killed her, and then you're talking about it was just, he's crazy. So as Suk-jun and Mr. Yu were walking out, Mr. Yu was basically like, I want him fired as of today. And then they was going to, through the reasons why he would be fired. It's the case, I guess he tries to dispute it. And they talked about how there were some unclear charges on his credit cards, on his, I guess his, the business card that the company credit card, the way he handled that situation where the man had the allergic reaction, and it was something else. It was some other issue, but basically they kind of getting their ducks in a row on, their justification for firing him. And, he eventually makes it to his apartment, makes it to Ji-hyuk's apartment. She's been released. Miss Yang was going out, I guess, to pick something up for her. And, they finally see each other, and of course they embrace, and he basically apologizes for everything that's happened. So Su-mi and Yura are meeting for the first time. They talk, and Su-mi plays the recording of Yura talking to her parents and telling them that she's going to get them out of the country, send them to China, and she has this whole thing on the recording. And then she says that poor people like to keep records. And they talked for a bit, and Su-mi was like, well, what can you do for me? And we don't see the completion of that conversation. Next clip we see is Su-mi is gone, and Yura is talking to her guy and saying that asking him if the bodies had been found, and he told her no, that he would check the police report. And then she tells him, make sure that they're not found because we don't want Su-mi, spooked at this point. And then she asked him, no, is there a way that we could take care of Su-mi and Min-hwan at the same time? And shortly after that statement, she gets a call from Min-hwan, I guess basically asking her if she could bail him out. So she sends her guy to get him out. And of course, Min-hwan's constantly running his mouth. And the guy basically said that this situation, I guess, put a dent in their plan. It's something with their timeline or something. And of course, Min-hwan didn't like the way he was talking to him and asked him, like, who do you think he was talking to? So he basically turned around and bust Min-hwan in the face. But this time he got his look back. I don't know if he headbutted the man. I'm not sure what happened in that situation. I know the man ended up on the ground with a bloody nose, and he basically told him that you're just her henchman, like you ain't really nobody, and he walks off. So he's in the cab on the way home, and Yura calls him to tell him that she had a meeting with his wife, and basically that your wife is not going to let this go easily. And so of course Min-hwan is basically like, is she crazy? Like he just like one more thing for him to deal with. And so shortly after he gets actually while he was talking to her, he gets a call from his job, and he clicks over, and it was basically Soo-jun telling him that he was terminated as of that day, and of course he's pissed. So he arrives home, and the people he owed money to, some of them were standing outside, and he got his butt kicked, right? So now he's in the house nursing his bruises, and he's trying to figure out how he's going to come up with this money. So he pulls up, for some reason he has access to Sumi's account, and he sees all of the money that she has because he remembered that she said she invested in stocks. And then he's like, tearing up the apartment, seeing if there's any more money, and he finds 3 stacks of cash, and then he realizes that she took this money from the payment that she gave to her parents to unalive Ji-won. So we flash to the hospital where Miss Yang is supposed to be getting her treatments. Her husband arrives there drunk, and the doctors are trying to get him out. Some glass ends up being broken, and he ends up picking up a piece of glass like he's about to attack her, saying that our daughter is going to be fatherless because of you. And Soo-jun arrives and basically disarms him with ease, and he tells him that I'm her attorney and don't ever come here again. So Ji-won gets a call out of the blue from Mr. Yu, and they agree to meet up. So they meet up. And she is, I just feel so bad about how things happen with me and Ji-won, and, I allowed love to interfere with for this whole thing, like nothing, nothing he cares about. And then he just turns around and asks her, did you try to kill Ji-won? And then that smile disappeared from her face. And then he turns around and says, I would have done the same thing. That her and Min-hwan are back together. And then he goes into if she doesn't do something to get Min-hwan back, then basically she's going to be left with nothing. And so she was like, well, I get that for me, but what's in it for you? And then he says, well, I get Ji-won back. And then she says, can I ask you a question? And she ends up asking him, why don't you like me? And he basically tells her, because you're selfish. And he ran down a whole list of other things. And then she said, well, basically, if you feel that way about me, then how can you work with me? He said, basically, it doesn't matter how I feel about you. It doesn't mean that I can't work with you. And so he walks out. And, of course, she always has that look on her face. So she gets back to her hotel room. And she said to herself, why is everybody looking for Ji-won? So her crazy is flaring up again, okay? So we flash to Yura and her guy, and he basically says, why don't we just leave and go back to Japan? And he tells her nothing good can come from you attacking you and Kay head on. And she basically feels like she can get to his grandfather, and she's saying that he knows that what a nuisance Cinderella can be. Basically, she's going to try to get the grandfather on her side, so that she can kind of bring Miss Yu back in. So we flash to Yura and the grandfather. They're playing a game, and Mr. Yu walks in, and the grandfather said, I thought you said, that things were one-sided. Did you change your mind? And he basically like, no, basically he made his choice, and that it's not going to work with having his ex frequent the house. And she was about to say something about, you need to get your grandfather's permission or something to that effect. And he was basically like, it's already done. Ji-won walks in, and she is, I guess, officially introduced to his grandfather. Because remember, in the previous episode, they met and talked briefly. And, but this is where he is officially introducing her as his choice, his partner. So as Yura and her guy was leaving, she basically saying that let's just go ahead and unalive Ji-won. So we get to the office, and she's on the elevator. Ji-won is telling, she's already said goodbye to, he was there because they were like putting the final touches on the meal kit or whatever. And so she was saying her goodbye. She gets on the elevator. Su-min's trying to call her. She hangs up. She calls her again. She hangs up. The elevator doors open. Su-min is standing there. And she's basically questioning, like, why are you not answering my phone calls? And she's really not obviously trying to get into any kind of a conversation with her. And she says that, she said, oh, I get it. This is Su-min saying this to Ji-won. Oh, I get it. You're basically saying that you're jealous that he chose me over you. I mean, I know you guys were together for 7 years, but he chose me. And then she has the gall to say, how could you seduce a married man, right? So Ji-won just went on and pulled her phone out and called security because she's going to have Su-min ejected from the premises. And she ends up saying to Su-min, why would I sleep with someone else's man? I'm not you. And Su-min was like, well, I'll put up posters and let everybody know, what you did. Da, da, da. And so Jim was like, I mean, you could, but Min-hwan doesn't work here anymore. So at this point, she doesn't know that he's been fired. So she's finding out now that her husband no longer works there. And so the next clip, you see her being escorted out by security. So while she's standing out there, she receives a text from Ji-won that was written like it was meant for Min-hwan, basically saying that your wife came here today and she scared me and da 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 da. And then she gets another text saying, oh, basically like, OMG, I sent this to the wrong person. Like, my bad. And so you can see Su-min's face it was screwed up. She was like, she was sick, right? So Mr. Yu and Ji-won are in the conference room and they're talking. And he gets a text from Su-min basically saying that, she's on board with whatever he has planned and that she wants to ruin Ji-won's life. And she went down this whole list of things, right? So we flash to Min-hwan and he gets an envelope in the mail and it's about the life insurance policy that the company has. And he's reading this policy and he realized that if your spouse dies that you get 500,000 won or something like that. And so now he's come up with a plan. So he goes to Europe basically saying that I have a way of getting rid of Su-min so that she's no longer a problem. And so Europe basically tells him this is your last chance. So Mr. Yu ends up sending Su-min a text saying that Min-hwan and Ji-won are at this hotel in this particular room. So Ji-won arrives at the hotel. She's, sashaying through the lobby. Su-min is already there in the cut. So she see her arrive and she goes up to the room, barges in, and then she finds Yu and Min-hwan in bed together. And so, of course, they trade words, and she basically tells them that she's going to send that audio to the police or to the news or something to that effect. Yura's man comes in and basically subdues her. Next thing you know, she's unconscious, tied up. So now it's up to Min-hwan to finish the job. So next thing you know, he has her in the car, takes her to some abandoned house or something, and has her tied up. And she is basically trying to basically barter for her life, basically saying that she has money. And he ends up showing her her account. Basically, he already took her money, so she doesn't have the money anymore. And then she doesn't have the recording anymore either, because he said that when you were unconscious, that you erased it. So you don't even have that. You can't send that to the police. So he ends up going to find something to finish the job. When he came back, she was gone. She somehow got untied herself. So they get into a tussle. And she ends up pushing him. And he ends up falling through the glass table. And of course, there was the flashbacks of as he was falling when Ji-won fell through the table. And that was basically the end of Min-hwan. So they're at the office the next day. I'm assuming this is the next day. They're at the office. Mr. Yu gets a call from Soo-jun basically saying that the divorce is going to be a lot easier for Miss Yang because somehow the video was restored on the SIM cards from the web cam in the car. Just all of a sudden. So now she has the audio and she has the video of his infidelity. And so we flash to Ji-won, and she gets the text or notification about Min-hwan's funeral. And so they're in the conference room and they're talking, and and of course Mr. Yu was telling her that basically at this point Su-mi is on the run, and her picture's all over every news station and everybody's looking for her. So later that night they're in the apartment, and they're watching the news story unfold, and they're talking, and then you go outside and you see Su-mi just standing outside, just watching, just looking at the apartment, I guess, plotting what her next move is going to be. And that is pretty much how this episode ends. So I'm going to end this here, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.